Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Hurley, and I'm here to present the podcast this week with Seamus Brady from An Cluiche to delve into this weekend's games. There's a fewer games than usual when you think about it. There's only 5 hurling games across all the competitions, only 2 football games. There is a game out on Croker Park this weekend, but it's not GA, it is rugby. Leinster and Northampton Saints, and we'll get on to the rubrics behind that. We won't be previewing the game because obviously this isn't the rugby podcast, as you can see here. But yeah, we will get on to the stories of the week as well, and maybe a bit about the Sam Maguire Tailteann Cup draws and the under 20 competitions which were ongoing this week as well. I was at an under 20 final last night between Cork and Kerry. Unfortunately, from my point of view, Cork did lose the game by 6 points to Kerry, but we will talk about all the under 20 action as well in this podcast at the very end. So how's all been with yourself, Seamus? You work at Croker Park yourself. It's kind of weird at the same time that they're preparing for a Champions Cup rugby game rather than a Gaelic football or a hurling game this weekend.
Yeah, you're right, Matthew. Thanks for having me on again. It's a weird one. Like, the pitch definitely looks different to how it usually looks, and one thing that is striking, if anybody's going to go to the stadium on the weekend, is that the pitch is very noticeably smaller now. Like, I know that you obviously knew that the rugby pitch is smaller than a Gaelic football pitch, but to actually see the rugby pitch on the Gaelic football field, and you can see the dimensions kind of still of the Gaelic football pitch, and you can see just how much bigger Gaelic football and hurling are played on, like a field that they're played on. It's going to be an interesting weekend. Obviously, I was talking about this with Aaron yesterday on his show, that like, we have a bit more breathing room between the games this weekend. Like last weekend, like as you said, like particularly for you, like I didn't envy you having to do stats for, games that are 3 games on at a time and trying to keep up with who was scoring what for what, and how many wides each team was having, etc. Like, for 3 games on at a time, it must have been tough. This weekend, it's a little bit more breathing room. You're able to actually pay more attention to the games, do more, in-depth breakdowns and analysis and everything like that on each team involved. And that does lead to better analysis and better breakdowns of the game. So let's just hope that they're good games, because they will have more spotlight on them than usual. Obviously, the provincial football finals, like the Munster one, we're pretty confident we know the result there. The Connacht one, that's the flagship carrier for the Gaelic football this weekend. Let's hope it's a good one.
Definitely so. And before we get into the action, I completely forgot, but I will mention it now. Our sponsors in the podcast at Capture Athletics. If you want to get the best gear around, the best Gaelic Games gear around for your club, for just personal preference or anything like that, go to Capture Athletics. They're the guys to do it. So check them out as well. So we'll get on to the week in Gaelic Games, and only 2 stories this week. We'll get on to the other story once we get into football. That's the Sam Maguire Tailteann Cup draws. We'll talk about them more in depth before the provincial finals. But first of all, we will talk about rugby in Croker Park, as we mentioned previously, and Leinster playing against Northampton Saints in the Rugby Champions Cup, European Champions Cup on Saturday evening in Croker Park. Obviously, we won't go in depth in the game. Obviously, it is a Gaelic Games podcast, but we will talk about like rugby in Croker Park, just your just general thoughts on the Seamus, foreign sports in Croker Park. For me, I think it's a brilliant move. More than anything, to have Leinster fans go into Croker Park, it's going to be a massive atmosphere. Obviously, the crowd for this game actually sold out within a day, more or less. It was absolutely incredible in its own right. So Leinster Rugby in Croker Park for the Champions Cup, Northampton Saints being the visitors, and a Champions Cup place, the final place on the line for Leinster at the weekend. So yeah, it should be a great weekend for Irish sport, great day for Irish sport in Croker Park.
Yeah, it should be, and I'm glad that it's happened. Ireland is in a golden place right now for the rugby. I mean, you've seen the interest in the World Cup last year, and then on top of that, Leinster are doing great. Obviously, the victory over La Rochelle in the quarterfinal definitely, drummed up more hype for this semi-final, and Croker Park then was obviously floated as being the potential venue. Croker Park came out themselves and said, like, yeah, we're hosting rugby fixtures this year. And, it's off to the races from that point. I like that they've done it. I don't see any reason why not. Like, I mean, it's good to keep the stadium ticking. It's good to keep, like, events on, matches on at the stadium. And, like, rugby as well, like, again, it's a similar kind of atmosphere in the rugby stadium that, like, fans can sit together. You don't need to segregate the fans, everything like that. If they had done the UEFA fan zone, for example, they would have had to segregate the fans. So rugby isn't, a major obstacle, a major challenge to how not only Croke Park but the whole area of Drumcondra will cope with all those fans showing up. It will be very similar in terms of the build up of what an All-Ireland final would be like. So the area is well used to dealing with that. Croke Park is well used to dealing with crowds of this size, and I think it would be a great move by the GA to get more stuff like this in the stadium. That if there's no GA fixtures on in Croke Park at the weekend and we're not clashing, I see no issues with using Croke Park, because on top of that, it's better for Irish sport in general to sell more tickets, get more eyeballs on it. It's better for the rugby, and it's actually better for the GA as well, because it gets fans who might have never been to Croke Park before. It gets them into Croke Park, and they're maybe thinking like, geez, this stadium is massive. Like, I mean, I wonder what this place is like for a GAA match. And they might just go the next time. So I think it's a good move, and I think it will suit all parties.
I think it will as well. And there are a few Leinster players on the team that actually played GA in the past. Obviously, Ty Furlong, the prop for Leinster, actually has a big GA background for Wexford himself in Gaelic football. Brilliant player back in the day. And I'm sure there's a lot of Leinster players that have a lot of Gaelic games background. So it is great to see them.
Somewhat of a dream come true, especially when you see how steeped in history rugby in Croke Park is. The Ireland-France game in 2007. The Ireland-England game in 2007 is one of the most historic days in Irish sporting history, given Bloody Sunday 1920, and then given Ireland's performance on the day, winning by 30 points. It's an amazing day in Irish sports history, given that the national anthems were sang back to back. Like, it's just absolutely extraordinary. So, like, that history is there, and you'll have no doubt that these players would have watched those games. They would have watched Leinster Munster in 2009. They would have paid attention to these games, and they would have, dreamed, especially like Ty Furlong and players that have GA backgrounds, that like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, if you had any ambitions of playing in Croke Park, but then you also had ambitions of playing rugby, like, this is the best of both come to life right in front of them. So I think they'll cherish it, and they definitely should, because who knows if something like this will happen again. So look, I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like.
Yeah, definitely so. And even 2J, past Leinster players that actually play Gaelic games after their retirement, to come to mind, Sean O'Brien played for his Carlow club, and so did Rock Harley in his Low club as well. So it is great to see that Leinster and the Gaelic games are going in there, and Gavin's come in with a comment here. In addition, there's a lot of GA games that shouldn't be played. They're mainly Leinster semi-finals. It's Europe's third largest stadium. It should be used for big sellout events. Exactly, Gavin. And you look at the soccer as well. Maybe they should use it for the soccer as well as that. And maybe two more questions on this. For the soccer itself, while we're on that, Liverpool are now out of the Europa League, so are West Ham. So it looks like now the fan zone is completely off. They will use the Aviva Stadium, obviously, for the final. Like, is that a bad thing for business for Croke Park? Do you think that Liverpool didn't get to the final, or do you think it's not much of a problem?
It's definitely a chance to make a good bit of money missed out on, but like, personally, I think that there were a couple of red flags. Croke Park, is a stadium that is very much set up for everybody to sit together, stand together, everything like that. I think they would have had a huge problem segregating the crowds. I think that there's no way of enforcing that. So I think they would have had a big problem with that. So it's one of those where, obviously the opportunity now is gone, but I don't think we'll be losing sleep over it, especially if, rugby events and concerts and everything like that. Like this year, like Croke Park has Coldplay, AC/DC and Bruce Springsteen coming. So like, I mean, like, we have enough events on that are elsewhere to that. And just something was off about the fan zone thing. I didn't really like the idea at the time when it came up, especially when certain clubs could have been involved. And I just feel like, I don't know. It's a stadium that is so steeped in history, and one of the proudest things for me anyway, when I'm working in the stadium, is I can honestly look at people like dead in the eye who've never seen the stadium before and tell them there is no violence between fans at this stadium. Yeah. There really isn't. Like, it's very rare. I know that we live in a world now where someone's like, well, what about that video last year from Clare Kilkenny? One locked Egypt threw a punch at someone in a stadium of where there was at the time 60,000 people in it. The laws of human nature says there's going to be an idiot somewhere. in a stadium full of that many people. So I'm so proud of that Croke Park has that there's that element of just community where we all go and watch the games, and in a sense, even though we're supporting different counties, we are all on the same team, keeping our games alive and keeping our culture alive. And I just feel like rugby aligns with that in the same way that the fans sit together and there's no real issues. The fans will stand together and there won't be any issues. I'd be stunned if there's any issues at this game.
Exactly, and we wish Leinster all the best. In fairness, obviously, I'm a Munster fan, so I'm a bit in the middle here. But to be honest, like a lot of the Leinster fans saying that Munster should support Leinster and things like that. To be honest, I'd like to see Leinster do well. I know a lot of Munster fans will go after me saying you need rivalry and things like that, but look, it's an Irish team, and for them to do well against Northampton at the weekend would be a good thing. Before we get on to the Gaelic Games action, though, there was a comment from Ciara Kelly. She's a columnist on News Talk. She used to be an expert leader on Operation Transformation, if anybody watched that show as well, just for context. And she came out with the comments today. There was a tweet that said from News Talk FM on X earlier today, Leinster fans are not allowed to drink alcohol in Croke Park seats because they're seen as quote-unquote foreign sport by the GAA, says Ciara Kelly on News Talk. And just for further clarity on that, some more of Ciara Kelly's quote here was, I think it's a GAA chip on the shoulder. If you're renting out Croke Park where alcohol can be sold legally, then the people renting it out should be allowed to make up the rules. They don't care when Bruce Springsteen or Garth Brooks fans drink away with gay abandon. I think they don't care about people who are there looking at people playing American football drink away. And a lot of people corrected her on X earlier today, saying that is the case in Croke Park, because you're not allowed to bring beer down to your seat, even at GAA games. So, like, it's just a case, Seamus, of just go to a GAA game and just learn the trade, more or less. Just go and learn what goes on in GAA games before coming out with comments on national radio like that.
You don't even need to go to a match in Croke Park. You just need to walk around the stadium. If you do a stadium tour or a skyline tour at Croke Park, you'll see at every entrance, it says very clearly, you are not allowed to bring alcohol into the stands. And that's just a policy that Croke Park has had. And to be honest, it's a good policy. Like, it genuinely is a good policy, because when you go up high in Croke Park, you go into the upper tier, you are way higher up than you think you actually are. And a lot of people get, have vertigo and everything like that, and they get quite dizzy up that high. Throw in the fact if you were bringing drinks with you and you're drinking away during the game, you're going to get a bit tipsy, a bit drunk up that high. It's not 100% safe. And personally, I think, again, if we're talking chip on the shoulder, like, I don't think there's a chip on the shoulder here. It's the way that things are done in the stadium. It has nothing to do with the GAA. It's the way that Croke Park do things. Croke Park says you're not allowed to bring pints into the stadium to watch the game. So it doesn't matter what event is on. You're not allowed to do that. Simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just a comment of just a case maybe of just looking at sources and going to a GAA game and things like that. But the less said about Ciara Kelly, the better on that. We will move on to the GAA action this weekend now, and there's only a few games this weekend, but we will go through them. So we'll start off with the hurling, and then we'll go on to the football, Sam Maguire and Tailteann Cup draws. But hurling, there's a lot more on the line this weekend, and especially this game in the Munster Senior Hurling Championship, Waterford against Tipperary on Saturday at 6 p.m. in Walsh Park on GAA Go. Now, the case for this game, like, Tip badly need to win this game more than anything, because their last two games, one of them is against Clare, and with the form Clare are in at the moment, I don't think Tip are getting anything out of that. So for Cork's sake and for Tip's sake, for their own sake, you would imagine a win is a must for Tipperary here. And going to Waterford, it's going to be a tough battle for them, especially with Waterford's last result against Cork and confidence they would have got from that game, and the fact that David Fitzgerald's team would have had 2 weeks off.
And the fact that they're going to put a target on Liam Cahill's back. Yeah. Like, the fact that there's that personal dynamic between Liam Cahill and he used to be their manager, and the way that he left, I think Davy Fitz is going to have no problems at all riling Waterford up to get ready for this game. And Tipperary come into this game off the back of as bad a performance as I've seen from them in a long, long time. I think I've seen some stat that was like Tipperary's worst defeat in Munster for 12 years or something. Like, they were played off the park by Limerick, and like when you see how close Clare pushed them and how Limerick, took a ton of pressure and still managed to get over the line against Clare. But then Tipperary never even really put it up to Limerick in that game. It was Limerick's game from the get-go. You'd wonder then how they're going to bounce back against Waterford, who are playing like they have a bone to pick with everybody. Like Waterford are playing like they are annoyed, like they are a team that we're told you're going to finish bottom of Munster. You're the handy 2 points for everybody. Davy Fitz has clearly struck a chord with those players, and they came out with bad intentions against Cork and got the win. It's in Walsh Park. That's massive. I think Waterford are going to absolutely be ready to go for Tip the minute that they arrive. I don't think Tipperary will go down as easy as they went against Limerick, but I said it on Aaron's show, I actually do back Waterford to win by a point or two, and I think that could spur them on to potentially finish third, which I think a lot of people wouldn't have said was possible at the beginning of the championship.
And considering Clare and Limerick, the way they're playing at the moment, you would imagine a win or a draw even for Waterford could be enough to finish third, because Cork still have to play Limerick. They still have to play Tip themselves. But there is a situation here that if Tip win this game and Cork beat Tipperary the last game in match day 4, I think it is, then all three sides will be on 2 points. That's considering that Clare and Limerick will be over the hills and far away, and then it'll go down to points difference. So, could you imagine a situation like that where a side will finish third in Munster, get through to the next round after winning one game of hurling? Yeah, that's still a situation. That's still something we have to consider.
Yeah, it would be nuts. Definitely. You'd hear a lot about championship structures and everything off the back of that. If that were to happen, but the Munster Championship is perfect. It doesn't need any tweaking or anything like that. You've got 5 quality teams going at it. Like, people live a lot in the present. People live a lot in the present. They a team wins, they're the greatest team. They're going to win the All Ireland. The team loses, they're the worst team we've ever seen. Tipperary are not a terrible team. They still have the potential to beat Waterford. Not a doubt in my mind they have the potential to beat Waterford. They still have the likes of Gerard O'Connor, Ronan Marr, Jake Morris, Jason Ford, that if they click, they could win. The question is, are they going to click? And you have to look at the most recent evidence as to where they're at, what form they are in. And the key thing is that Waterford actually have a little bit more of a settled team than Tipperary. I don't know who Tipperary are going with at centre half back. I don't know who's going to be their main attacking outlet. Is it going to be Jason Ford? Is it going to be Jake Morris? Is it going to be Noel McGrath? We don't know. So Waterford, on the other hand, I feel like we have a better idea what they're coming with. Yes, they are missing players like Austin Gleeson, but we know the 15 that they're coming with, and it's a good, solid 15 that I think over the course of the game, because they will play like a team, they will play like a unit that is A, very driven to get revenge on Tipperary and Liam Cahill, and B, shut everyone up, telling them that they're going to finish 5th, telling them that they're going to finish bottom of the group. This is Tipperary's easy 2 points. Again, Davy's going to be drilling that into them. And my thought process is, if Waterford can beat Cork, then they can definitely beat Tipperary as well. And right in this moment, I'm going to say that they will.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult one to call, but for Waterford to have Ty Borka back at centre back, Conor Prunty back at full back, Jamie Barrett in midfield. I know they're without Austin Gleeson, but they still have Stephen Bennett back in the team, Mikey Kiley, and Daisy Hutchins. The latter two in particular are now playing to their strengths under Davy, as evidence from the Cork game. They are, after that Cork game, it has kind of the feeling from a Waterford point of view, if they don't get out of Munster this year and beat Tipperary this weekend, when will they ever get out of Munster? Because this is a big chance for them, really.
It is, yeah. And I personally thought when Ken McGrath went in at the Waterford under-20s, I just had a little feeling that this is set up for him to take over from Davy whenever Davy goes. And I thought Waterford were putting in a little bit of a contingency that just in case we fall flat on our face in 2024 and go out in Munster, that Davy can go and Ken McGrath can come in and build a Hall of Fame management team that might be able to get Austin Gleeson back and might be able to get the best out of the Waterford crop of players that is there. But Davy is defiant and he looks determined to go down swinging with Waterford. And personally, I think that they will want this game more than Tip. Tipperary didn't look against Limerick like they were willing to claw their way to a result. Last year against Limerick in the Gaelic in Temple Stadium, they actually did look like they were willing to fight every step of the way, and they got that equaliser from John McGrath. And then Tipperary went out and they still lost to Waterford very soon after then. So, and that was when Waterford were really in the pits. Like, a lot of people were giving them all sorts of abuse at the time last year, and they still came out and beat Tipperary. So maybe it's a case of the shoes on the other foot this time. Maybe Tipperary will go out because everybody's giving them abuse and win this game. But I just feel like who's more likely to come to this game at the closest to their 100%? I think it's Waterford right in this moment. I think Tipperary will show up 6 out of 10. Waterford will show up 8 out of 10. And while I think Tipperary probably have better players, I think Waterford will show up closer to their best, and I think they'll shade it by a point or two.
Do you think Walsh Park will be a massive factor for Tipperary to come down? Like, especially after a 6-day turnaround, like, it's massive.
Yeah, it will be. And no doubt, like, Davey will have plans there for them. Like, he was at the Limerick game for a reason. Like, he's watching how they do stuff. He's watching how Paddy Levy can operate best against them. He's watching how Calum Lyons can operate best against them. He's watching what their tendencies are. And then he's definitely going to factor that into the Walsh Park dynamics of the field and everything like that. How close the crowd is to the pitch, everything like that. And he's going to try play every single millimetre of advantage that Waterford can get. I think it's going to shape up to be a good day for Waterford. I really do. I think Waterford are going to win this by 2 points. And I think it could be one of the stories of the summer if they get out in the Munster Championship, because it's obviously difficult to remember now because of how much time changes everybody's minds and stuff. But Waterford were tipped by pretty much everybody to finish bottom.
And yeah, this is an opportunity to shut the fans up, and I think Waterford win this game as well. But if Tipperary win this, it'll put the cat amongst the pigeons. But like, Tipperary have to do better than the last game against Clare, or Limerick, excuse me, because that game was just really, really poor from their point of view. It was just really, they were flat throughout. Like, the attack wasn't clicking, the defence as well. Limerick were cutting through the wide open each and every time. And when you look at the Waterford performance against Cork, it was absolutely brilliant in its own right. So yeah, I'd back Waterford to win this game as well, similar to what you said, Seamus, by 2 points. Now, this is a game where we don't know what results will turn up in this one. I know this team, the home team in this game, did lose unexpectedly last weekend, Wexford that is, to Antrim. They're up against Galway at home in Wexford Park on Saturday at 4 p.m. on GA Go. But as we said previously with Wexford on your podcast, and Aaron's podcast, on my podcast as well, this Wexford team is so inconsistent. You wouldn't be surprised if they bite back in this game and beat Galway. Because again, look, Galway are a funny one. They're a really fishy one as well, because last week they had the big opportunity to beat Kilkenny. They ended up getting less scores than them, and Nicky a late point through Conor Whelan, despite having literally the full squad available to them. So, like, this game is hard enough to call, really.
Yeah, and it was the Kilkenny side that was missing Adrian Mullen, Owen Cody, Owen Murphy, Michael Kerry. Like, they were missing a lot of key players, a lot of starters. And as you said, Galway needed the late Whelan point to snatch a draw. And that's kind of how it felt after the game, like Galway had snatched a result. Wexford are the strangest hurling team in Ireland. Like, they literally, I don't know what version of them is going to turn up each week. Yeah, I was saying it to Aaron on his pod yesterday that if I was Galway, I would have seen that result and been like, oh no. Because Wexford have put themselves, like, Wexford are fantastic at digging themselves out of a hole. But they're also fantastic at digging themselves into a hole. And they've done it already in this Leinster Championship. And we know what usually follows Wexford with a dire performance like that, where they put themselves on the brink. They usually save themselves with a heroic performance in a game in which they are underdogs. So this is a dangerous, dangerous game for Galway. Make no mistake about it. Dangerous, dangerous game for Galway. Lee Chin is in sensational form. And like, he is. And like, you're looking at now, very much you're looking in this game to Rory O'Connor and Conor McDonald. I mean, like, you lads need to step up in this game now, because they got 3 points between them in the last game against Antrim, while Lee Chin hit 2-11. Lee Chin can't keep doing that. He can't keep saving everybody else. He needs the other players to step up and to be counted for. I know Keenburn hit 4 points, but really apart from that, like, there was nobody really helping Lee Chin. And in this game, other people need to step up and make themselves counted. Like, going into this, I just have this sneaky feeling, like Aaron said the same and agreed with me. We both went for a draw. We said like Wexford have been the kings of draws this season. They've got how many draws in the Allianz League? And then they drew with Dublin in round 1. And then
There's
like
4
I
draws
looked,
this year.
yeah, but I looked at stages like the Antrim game might go to a draw as well. And then Galway, last time Galway went to Wexford Park, it was a draw as well, wasn't it? It was one where you had the debacle about how long Leach in over a free versus how long Conor Cooney got before the ref gave it the other way. And like things like that, I was like, that ended a draw. So I was like, personally, I can see this finishing a draw.
They definitely up their prediction, no doubt about it. And Wexford are definitely a team that they're so weird, aren't they? Like they perform well one day against Galway and Kilkenny, and then they fall flat in their face against an Antrim, Carlow, or Westmeath. It's never ending, really, from a Wexford point of view. It's absolutely ridiculous in its own right. And you were right about Leach.
I think Aaron was saying they've got 5 wins in the Leinster Championship since they won it in 2019. And I think 3 of those wins have been against Kilkenny and Galway. So like,
they're just,
so it's just they've beaten Dublin less times than they've beaten Kilkenny. Like, you don't know what to make of them. Like, they're like, I don't know. I don't know what to compare them to. I really don't know what to compare them to.
I'm thinking actually when you look at soccer, for example, maybe Chelsea. They perform well against the big sides, and then against Fulham
like
and Crystal Palace
that doesn't study for the exams, absolutely flops it, fails, and then studies a tiny bit for the repeats and gets a H1 or gets 90%. And you're like, what? Why on earth did you not just study for the first time round? Like, why did you not put in a little bit of the performance you did against Kilkenny against Antrim? Because then you would have won. You wouldn't be in this situation going into this game. And the thing is that I do think that they will make life extremely difficult for Galway.
Yeah, I think so as well. And and add to the fact as well, this Galway team, they do have quality players like Conor Cooley, Conor Whelan, Keenan Fahey, and all them, in fairness to them.
But they're gettable. There's something that you can get them. I think you can. Yeah. They're not the Galway of 2017, 2018.
Yeah. And when you look at them in the league as well, they were so weird to judge. Like, they lost to Tipperary in Semple Stadium by hitting an astronomical number of wides. Against Kilkenny were missing 4 of their first teamers in that game, including the likes of Owen Cody, Owen Murphy and all them, and still drew the game while getting less scores than them at home. So I don't think there's something right there. And you said it last season, Seamus, to be fair, on this very podcast, you said there's something wrong there with Henry Shefflin being in with Galway. I'm sure you stick with the same views to this day, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there was the rivalry developing with Cody. And then when Cody left, like, Shefflin's just, I don't know. I don't know. Because, look, they are building something. But the reality is like, last year they just got outclassed by Limerick in the semi-final. And they did look a mile off them. And when you looked at like the 2018 final, for example, and how Galway were the favourites going into that 2018 final, and how Limerick, were hanging on for dear life at the end and managed to just fall over the line against Galway to their first All-Ireland since the 70s. And yet now, Galway were miles off the pace against Limerick just 5 years later. I think it would be a bit of a head-scratcher to think, how on earth has the gap completely reversed in such a short period of time, like, to such an extraordinary level. Like, I obviously know Galway, like, big players have stepped away, like Joe Canning, but in the grand scheme of things, Canning is really the only massive player that has stepped away. David Burke, okay, isn't what he was, but he's still a quality hurler. And then apart from that, is there many more missing? Johnny Cohn, like, McInerney's still there. Daithí Burke is still there. Conor Cooney's still there. Conor Whelan's still there. Mannion's still there. Both of them. Yeah. So I'm there, like, thinking to myself, there's no real reason why Galway should be as far off from Limerick as they were in last year's All-Ireland semi-final. I remember, like, especially when you look at the start that they made, and then there were some tactical decisions made that Limerick just took over from there and dominated the rest of the game. And you do wonder if Galway had just stuck with what the original plan was, how much better would they have done, or would Limerick eventually have figured that out? You never know. Hindsight, hindsight tells us it wasn't a great decision, but in that moment, maybe it looked like the best decision to make. And personally, I just think Galway, they're a really difficult one to read. I don't think Shefflin and this Galway team win an All-Ireland together. I can't see it happening. I think the only team who can stop Limerick for me is Clare. And that's why I was quite worried when Clare played against Limerick, who played the worst hurling I've ever seen that Limerick side play, and Limerick still won. That had me convinced that Limerick could do whatever they wanted and still win. And basically, so I don't see Galway beating Limerick, and then how are they getting an All-Ireland then?
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned the good amount of players there. You still have Evan Nyland and Brian Concannon there. And what's weird as well, Ian Burke played so well at that club.
The best bet is if Clare take them out. That's everybody's best bet, by the way. That's everyone's best bet, is that if Clare get Limerick in the All-Ireland semi-final and completely turn them over, and then Galway or Kilkenny meet them in the All-Ireland final. I think that's everyone's best bet.
Very true, yeah. And even from a Galway point of view as well, Ian Burke played so well in that final for St. Thomas's, was absolutely brilliant in that final against O'Loughlin Gays at club level. Why isn't Henry Shefflin putting a punt on him? I'm wondering now.
I think they've tried him before and it just hasn't really worked. I don't know.
Galway fans feel free to comment below, but I find that
there is examples of that, of quality club players that it just doesn't work in the county for some reason.
Yeah, definitely. But from a Wexford point of view, you mentioned Lee Chin has stepped up in previous games, so has Cian Byrne. Is this a huge pressure cooker game for the likes of Liam Oak McGovern, Conor McDonald, Cathal Dunbar, Corey Bird Dunbar potentially, even though he is still young? Is there pressure on those sorts of players to step up in this game? Because Lee Chin is not a magician. Well, he acts like a magician on the pitch. He's absolutely incredible at what he does. He's an incredible hurler, one of the best in the country. But he can't do it all by himself. So these Wexford players need to step up or basically go bust.
Well, that's it, is that Lee was absolutely extraordinary. If you told at the start of the game, Lee, you're going to score 2-11 and win man of the match and lose, you'd be wondering what on earth happened with everybody else around him. And that is the truth. What did happen with everybody else around him? Why is it all still resting on him in a league where Wexford did unearth Seamus Casey, Cian Byrne? Why was it then still, the minute the game gets tough, turn to Lee Chin to try and rescue us from the situation that we're in? And this is the game where, MacDonald, O'Connor need to step up, because Lee Chin is going to get someone like a Daithí Burke put on him. And it's very difficult to score anything off Daithí Burke, let alone 2-11. So in this game, MacDonald, O'Connor, Cian Byrne, they all need to step up and chip in, because if they don't, it could be a bad day for Wexford. But I think whenever Wexford have their backs to the wall, they come out swinging. And I think they'll come out swinging, but Galway will swing back, and I think it will be a draw.
It's an interesting one to predict. I'm going to go for Wexford in this one, because of the fact, like you said there, they swing back. They always seem to do it. And I'm not sure about this Galway team. I haven't been sure nearly all year about them, even the league. That game against Kilkenny last week kind of did it for me, because that was a huge opportunity to get one over on Kilkenny without any controversy, without any spotlight whatsoever. And they didn't do it. They needed a last-minute point to equalise the game at home. So I don't think that's a good sign to go on. So I'm going to go for Wexford win here, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a draw either. It could be a draw, no doubt about it, but we'll have to see on Saturday. And strangely, that's the only Leinster Championship game, and only one Munster Championship game as well. And there's no Christy Rigg, Nori Marr, or Nicky Bracker games this weekend. There are 3 Joe McDonagh Cup this weekend, so there's only 5 hurling games, which is pretty strange. But we will move on to the Joe McDonagh Cup before we get on to football. The big game this weekend is Kerry against Laois live on Clubber at 3 p.m. on Saturday in Austin Stack Park. Now, both these sides are both on 4 points, 2 wins out of 2. You'd imagine the winner of this is over the hills and far away into the Joe McDonagh Cup final. And Seamus, do you think this will be Laois at a canter, or do you think Kerry will put it up to them, especially at home?
I think Kerry will give them the toughest test that they've faced so far. Like, Kerry have definitely made a splash in the first 2 games, beating Down and beating Westmeath on the opening day was definitely a result to make you sit up and take notice. So I think it'll be the toughest game that Laois have had so far. Opening day victory over Offaly was a big win, and then the scoreline they put up against Meath was sensational. They've really made a statement that, we're out of here. We're too good for this division. Paddy Purcell, Ender Olin, like experienced campaigners like that, still pulling the strings for Laois. I do think they're going to win this game, but I think it will be the toughest challenge they've faced so far. Kerry are good, man. Like, Kerry definitely are a tricky side to face. They're very experienced in the John McDonagh, hence why they keep reaching all those finals that they reach in the finals. They've lost have been epics. So I think when you look at players like Maurice O'Connor, Fionn Mackesy, they're not going to be no pushovers. And I think Laois will have their work cut out for them, but I think that they'll get over the line.
You think this will be a tougher test than the Offaly game for Laois, where they need a last minute goal?
Yeah, I think it will be. I think Laois will win by a point.
That's interesting. Actually, we'll move on to Offaly next, though, because a few Offaly fans might go after you, Seamus. They're playing Meath, and to be honest, they should win this game in Park Talton at 3 p.m. on Clubber on Saturday. But you don't rate Offaly that highly. I know they'll win this game. I think both of us are categorically saying they'll win it. But you don't rate Offaly as high as Kerry this year?
I do rate Offaly highly. I probably would put them second to Laois in terms of the overall grand scheme of things. Like, if I was saying Dublin are going to draw against one of these, which one do you want to draw against the least? I'd put Laois top, I'd put Offaly second. But just saying that Kerry at home, I think it's going to be an extremely tough test for Laois. There's no disrespect intended to Offaly in that sense. I just think that Offaly slightly are a little bit more in transition than Kerry are. I think Kerry are kind of more settled in their team. Offaly are bringing a lot of youngsters in, like young Screeney and Charlie Mitchell and everything like that. And I think they're in a transitional phase where they are still putting the blocks of their team together. Now, I do think that, fast forward a year, I think Offaly will be in Laois's position where they'll be, we're out of here. We're up to the Liam McCarthy Cup. But I think Kerry are very experienced in the John McDonagh Cup. I think that they've been around the block and then some, all those finals that they've got to. I think they've picked up a few tricks of the trade along the way, hence why when it was go time, they were off the mark before Westmeath were. And a Westmeath side that beat Wexford last year in the championship. But yeah, in this game, I would back Offaly to beat Meath. I think Meath have taken a pasting. And then obviously the manager stepping away and everything like that just before the start of the John McDonagh Cup, not great. And they haven't looked like they've recovered since back-to-back defeats, and the second one against Laois was a horrific day out.
Yeah, exactly. I'd back Offaly to win that game as well, and I'd back Laois to beat Kerry, even though that'll be a tight encounter in Austin Stack Park. And the last game this weekend, Down against Westmeath. As far as I know, it's not live on Clubber anyway. It might be live on Down GATV. I'm not entirely sure, so I didn't put in the TV details. It is on Saturday, though, at 3 p.m. in Park, Esther or Ballycran, in somewhere in Down anyway, in the Joe McDonagh Cup. Down have won a game, Westmeath are yet to win a game. This is a crucial game for Westmeath. I watched them against Offaly last week. They look good at times. David O'Regan scored a goal in that game. Killian Doyle got 14 points. There are some quality players in that Westmeath team. As you pointed out earlier, they did beat Wexford last year in the Leinster Championship. Both they badly need to win this game, don't they? No points on the board. They have to win just to ease relegation worries just a little bit.
They have to get off the mark. I think there'd be serious questions asked about Fortune, like Joe Fortune, and Joe Fortune, an absolute gentleman. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times. And I just feel like if they are to lose this game, I don't really see how you're going to get enough points to save yourselves and to stay up. So pressure's on, and it's away from home, so it's even more tricky. It's even more of a banana skin than it might have been. It's going to be a difficult one, no question about it. But I think they have the hurlers to get through this. Players like David Williams and stuff, I think that they'll just tip Westmeath along enough. I think they'll do enough. I think they'll get the win.
And just for context, if anybody's going to the game, that's on in Ballycran. I just checked it there. So, it's in Ballycran and Down. And should be a difficult game for Westmeath, but I think they'll get over the line as well. We'll move on to the football now. And before the two provincial finals, there's only 2 games this weekend of the football and a few under 20 games. So we'll get through them in a bit. But we'll get through, firstly, before the All Ireland draw, actually, because we'll lead into Galway Mayo that way. We'll go into the Tailteann Cup draw first, because the draw was obviously made this Tuesday. And I'll get up in a few images of the groups now. So in Group 1, you have Kildare, Leitrim, Longford, and Waterford. In Group 2, you have Sligo, Antrim, Wexford, and Tipperary. In Group 3, you have Fermanagh, Laois, Wicklow, and Carlow. And then in Group 4, finally, you have Down, Offaly, Limerick, and London. So just wanted to get your general thoughts on the group, Seamus, here. Like, the Seed 1 teams look like they're probably favourites for the Tailteann Cup. In Sligo, Kildare, Fermanagh, Down, even though Fermanagh are in the same group as Laois, who coincidentally knocked them out of the Tailteann Cup last season. So what do you think of that draw, the Tailteann Cup? Do you think it'll be easy plain sailing in those groups, 1, 2, 3, and 4? Or do you see any shocks?
Well, what the craziest thing is about it, I was saying it to Aaron, and like, I think those groups are actually laid out in the exact order that I would pick the tables to finish. I think the only difference is I might pick Wexford to finish above Antrim as a shock. I think that could be on the cards. But apart from that, like, yeah, I think Wexford could beat Antrim there, but I do think Tip would finish bottom of that group. I do think Sligo would finish top, and then Antrim and Wexford to battle it out. Groups 1, 3, and 4, I think will finish exactly as you have them listed. I think Kildare will top 1. I think Down will top 4, and I think Fermanagh will top 3.
It's an interesting one. I just want to go on to Group 3 for a bit. Do you think Carlow could cause a shock? 2 quarter-final appearances in a row in the Tailteann Cup. I know Wicklow and Laois are tough teams for them, but do you think Carlow could cause a surprise here?
They're the most dangerous for Wicklow. I don't think they're any trouble for Laois. Laois fairly handled them in the Allianz Leagues when Carlow were in desperate need of points. Laois absolutely put them to the sword, so I wouldn't be expecting a result there from Carlow against Laois. But Carlow against Wicklow, I think you could definitely see an upset there. But as in the top 2, I still think are going to get out.
Yeah, exactly. There are some Kildare fans that actually think that Leitrim, Longford and all them would put it up. But just before we get out to Sam McCoy, from Kildare point of view, if they don't top that group, like, it's almost like, if you can't do this, we can't help you. Simple as. Like, it's a situation they have to top that group, don't they?
They will. I think they will top that group. But I was at the Leinster semi-final against Louth and just watching the Kildare team, and like, they're not trying. They are giving it their all. The lads on the pitch are giving it their all. It's not a case that lads aren't trying. Like, I was watching the Louth game, and there's players putting diving blocks in, throwing themselves in front of the Louth shots. The thing that I noticed about Kildare is they have no confidence going forward. Kevin Feely and Dara Kieran were the only people who were shooting on the Kildare team. Like, all the other players, even Daniel Flynn, looked like they were very happy to hand pass the ball over. The amount of times that Kildare got goal chances and overplayed the ball was staggering. The amount of times they got through 3-on-1 and they tried to play that final pass too many, and a Louth hand would just get in and intercept it. It really reeked of a team that were terrified to make mistakes, because they're, again, absolutely hammered for any mistakes that they're making. And this is why, like, I'm saying, like, however bad it is, lay off the players when it comes to, insulting them, giving them abuse, anything like that. Lay off them, because it doesn't help. It never helps. Like, I don't know how people think that criticizing players that are literally taking time out of their lives to represent their county is a good thing to do. The Kildare lads are giving it their all. Are they the best team Kildare have ever produced? Definitely not. Are they trying? Yes. They are giving it their all. So I would say, like, lay off them a bit. They will finish top of the Tailteann Cup group, and they have a very good chance of winning the Tailteann Cup, because if they get a couple of wins, they might just build up a little bit of confidence again. And then players like Daniel Flynn, Paddy Woodgate might start pulling the trigger a bit more closer to the goal. And you never know. It could be a Meath-style situation where it finishes in Champagne. Meath last year were shocking at this point. Meath had just been battered by Offaly in the group stages, and they barely avoided relegation to Division 3, and Offaly wiped the floor with them in the Leinster quarter-final. Remember that? Meath only scored 2 points in the first half.
Yeah.
And then they went into the Tailteann Cup and everybody was saying, no way, me, they're going to win the Tailteann Cup. And I said, I think that they would. I thought that they would be underdogs to win it. And everyone was saying it's going to be Down or Fermanagh or Cavan. And Meath upset the odds and went on and won it. I think Kildare are in the exact same position this year. I think player for player, Kildare have the best talent in their squad. It's just a question of whether or not they can get it up to the required level to beat Down, beat Sligo and beat Fermanagh, because I think they're the top 3 contenders.
Just before we get into the Sam Maguire, your favourites for the Tailteann Cup, would it be Kildare?
I picked Down at the start of the year. Picked Down at the very beginning of the year when I didn't know that Kildare were going to be in the Tailteann Cup.
And you're sticking to them? I'm
going to go Down.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Down as well. I said that at the start of the season. To be honest, after the league campaign and before the Sam Maguire. But we'll get on to the Sam Maguire groups now. It's a bit annoying that these groups were made before the provincial draws. And we'll get on to Mayo and Galway, the implications in that game later on. But the Group 1 is the winner of that Connacht final, which we'll discuss later. The loser of the Ulster final next week between Donegal and Armagh, Derry and Westmeath. In Group 2, you have the winners of Leinster, but to be honest, we know who that is at this stage. It's going to be Dublin. And the losers of the game we'll discuss later on, Roscommon and Cavan. In Group 3, we'll have the winners of the Ulster final next week between Donegal and Armagh, Clare. We'll discuss that game later as well. Tyrone and Cork. And then in Group 4, you have Kerry, let's be honest, Louth, let's be honest, Monaghan and Meath. So what's your thoughts on them groups in general? Like, think there could be a few shocks at that. Like, the group that I point towards is the last group there. Kerry are the clear runaway favourites in that, and no doubt about it. But when you look at the other 3, Louth, Monaghan, Meath, there's a potential there for Meath to finish second, in my opinion, in that group.
And there's a potential for any of the 3 of them to finish second. I think if I was any of the 3 of them, I'd be absolutely delighted with that draw. You've avoided Derry, you've avoided Dublin, you've avoided the Ulster defeated finalists. Like, you really have got a sweet one there. The Kerry game is going to be a humbling experience for probably all 3 of them. But after that game, particularly you'd imagine Meath, because O'Rourke seems to be a bit of a realist, almost too real. Like, after the Dublin game, he was almost too honest. But he'll know what games they can win. He won't bother with in my opinion, he won't bother with the Kerry game. He'll go, we need to beat Louth and we need to beat Monaghan.
Yeah,
I think all 3 of them will look at those games. I think Tyrone as well have ended up in a decent enough group. I don't think they'll be having too many complaints about it. Like, if they're ending up in a group with Clare and Cork, I think Tyrone will back themselves to get wins in both of those games and finish second. I don't think they'd back themselves to beat whoever the champions are of the province. It was Connacht they got, wasn't it?
They got Ulster.
Ulster, yeah. Okay, I think they might fancy a rematch against Donegal. I think they would fancy themselves against Armagh. I think Tyrone would be happy with the group they ended up in.
Yeah. I suppose I think they're home to Clare. If Clare obviously loses Munster final at the weekend, so that'll suit Tyrone. They have a neutral venue against Cork, though. That'll be on a Tullamore or Port Leach, I'd imagine. Is there potential for Cork to beat Tyrone there?
And there's potential for Cork to definitely make it difficult for them. I think it will be a similar situation as the Kerry game, that Cork will go into that game with an underdog kind of mentality. I think they'll go into it with a similar attitude and similar preparation to how they went into the Roscommon game and the Mayo game. And obviously they won both of those games. So it's definitely a dangerous one for Tyrone. No question about it. I would make Tyrone favourites in this particular moment. I think Tyrone performed well against Donegal, and I think the forwards like Dara Canavan and everything like that are just breathtaking. But Cork have probably one of the best not probably, definitely. I was going to say probably the best, but he's definitely one of the best man markers in the country in Daniel O'Mahony. Yeah. So, if he goes on Dara Canavan, you never know. He could quell him just a little bit. And if Cork are then set up well to, grind out scores, I certainly would have put it past them to cause an upset.
Definitely so. And as we move on to the Connacht final, I want to bring up the Group 1 and Group 2 again, because it has major implications. So the winners of the Connacht final will face losers of the Ulster final next week, Derry and Westmeath. The losers in the Connacht final will face against Dublin. They'll avoid them in later stages up until the All-Ireland final. Roscommon and Cavan. So that is the groups for the winners and losers of the Connacht final. And we will get on to the Connacht final now between Galway and Mayo, which is live on RT2 at 4 p.m. on Sunday in Salt Hill. There's no other way to start this game, Seamus. The draw. Is it more beneficial for either of these two to lose this game rather than win? I know it's a horrible situation to be in before going into a provincial final, but is that exactly it, do you think?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I'm already over hearing people being like, because you know it's coming. People would be like, oh, Galway wanted to lose that game, or Mayo wanted to lose that. Shut up. Like, they didn't want to lose. You don't go into a provincial final being like, yeah, lads, we're going to go out in front of all of our fans that have travelled to watch us in the provincial final. We're going to go out and lose. Yeah, what a plan. Like, it's basically pick your poison. You're in a bad group either way. You get Dublin in one and you get Derry in the other. Like, you're not exactly picking, like, you're picking between two teams that played out one of the best games of Gaelic football we've ever seen in the league a few weeks ago. And I don't know, it annoys me when people act like there's some art to losing a match. Like, oh, it's all part of a big tactical master plan. Like, no, they just lost the game. It's not a tactical master stroke to lose it. I think it could be a situation where, like, one of the teams loses and then it's like, man, it's not so bad. Like, we are in the group, but they're not going to go out to lose it. Like, no way. You reckon, like, seriously, anybody who thinks that, what do you think the players would react? Like, seriously, just imagine that if you're a Galway player or if you're a Mayo player and Pádraig Joyce or Kevin McStay walks in and goes, right, lads, I don't care about this game. We're going to go out and we're going to play. Just when you get in front of the ball, when you get in front of the goal, just do not kick the ball over the bar. Just kick it wide. Let Mayo win. Let Galway win. And then we'll get into the better group. Sound good? Let them have the cup. We don't need it. Like, no chance. Joyce doesn't have a great record against Mayo. Kevin McStay has never won a provincial championship as a manager with Mayo. They are not going to take this opportunity lightly. There was a comment in here from, there was a comment in on Aaron's podcast where they were talking about, there's no real difference between one or the other. You're probably going to lose to Derry and you're probably going to lose to Dublin, and you'll be favourites in the other two games. So whichever group they go into, they will probably finish second in both. So it's not really much of a difference to go into one or to go into two. So I think both teams will be like, there's nothing to be won here from losing this game. Let's go for the silverware. Let's go for the trophy. There's a lot to be gained by winning a provincial championship still, especially with the rivalry between the two counties, especially when you throw in the fact that Galway, have only beaten Mayo, I think, once in the last 5 years of the Connacht Championship. The fact that Mayo haven't won a Connacht Championship under McStay, there's a lot to be gained here, and I think they're both going to go for it. But right now, in this moment, I do think Mayo are in slightly the better position.
Interesting to note as well, this is the first provincial final between the two, other than COVID years, since 2014. So it's quite an unusual one, because these two were the dominant forces in the Connacht Championship, it's fair to say. So it's kind of a difficult stat to get your head around. But when people are talking about sides being, oh yeah, we'll be better off losing this game to go into this group and things like that, does that take the meaning of winning an Ulster Cup away from it more than anything? Because it's a shame in my eyes, because it's an opportunity to win a trophy, to win in front of from Galway's perspective, in front of your own fans, from Mayo's perspective, to win a first Connacht title since 2015, if you disregard COVID. So to go into a game with some people saying in the media and some people saying on social media saying that, oh yeah, I'd be better off losing this just to sacrifice a cup here, it's just upsetting in my eyes, and it's just wrong more than anything, and it just probably epitomizes the probably situation we're in at the moment in regards to provincial championships.
I just feel like when people say that, I think sometimes it's because they can't really deal with the fact that they just lost. Like, It'd be like Wexford people coming out and being like, don't worry about the Antrim game, sure, we'll beat Galway. It's all part of the plan. Like, you lost. Deal with it. Don't act like this is some master stroke. Because if a manager came out and said, yeah, like, we actually didn't care about that game, what on earth? Like, it's a Connacht final against your biggest rival, and there's silverware on the line. Of course, that game matters. I think it comes back to a structure thing that, you know, you don't get that much of a rest between the Connacht final and between the group stages kicking off. Like, it's crazy to think that the group stages isn't not far away at all. That the Tailteann Cup kicks off next weekend. Like, it's just all happening so fast. Like, the league final was literally 4 weeks ago. Like, it's mental to think that we're already here. Like, how are we here already? But yeah, like with this game, I think both of them are going to go hammer and tongs to win this one. No question about it. Both of them are going to go hammer and tongs to win this one. I think Mayo are in slightly a better position. I think McStay will be actually very happy with how the year has gone. There's no hype around Mayo. Nobody's talking about them going to win the All-Ireland last year when they beat Galway. Hey, they were going to win the All-Ireland, right? This was their year. Nope. And on top of that, this year, there isn't as much hype around them. People aren't tipping them to win the All-Ireland and everything like that. Yet they have done better in the Connacht Championship than they did last year. They've beaten Roscommon, who beat them in Castlebar last year. They went away to Dr. Hyde and they beat Roscommon. They didn't go hammer and tongs. They didn't go, 100 miles an hour. Once they had the game wrapped up, they managed the game out to the finish line. Job done. Tick the box onto the next one against Galway. I think McStay will be delighted with that. I think Galway are running on fumes. I think when you see the amount of players that they're missing, the amount of players that are injured, they're like nowhere near full strength. Even the players that have come back, Shane Walsh did look off colour against Sligo. Like, they aren't at their full level. And I think Mayo are in slightly a better place. I think the form of the likes of Ryan O'Donoghue, Aidan O'Shea, I think will be telling. I think Mayo will win by a goal. I'm going Mayo 114, Galway 14 points.
It's an interesting prediction. From a Galway point of view, more than anything, like, disregard the group stages and placings and all that. Isn't this a big opportunity for Galway to prove that they aren't away from the All-Ireland series? Because the game against Sligo, they only won with a last-minute goal from Rob Finnerty. You could remember the Cole Palmer celebration on that. But the matter of the fact was, Galway late in that game only once, and that was in the 71st minute at the very end. And Sligo were very unlucky to lose that game. Paul Joyce has to get a performance out of these players, especially with Damien Comer and Shane Walsh gradually coming back into the team. Don't you think that way, Seamus? Because it's a crucial one for Galway to just get the confidence flowing, more or less.
It certainly is. It's massively important, because Galway were held by Sligo and kind of figured out by Sligo for long, long periods of that game. And they've gone again from this time last year. Everybody's saying Galway are an outside shot for the All-Ireland and everything like that. And I truly believe that they have the panel to do it. I really think Galway at full strength are a match for anyone. And last year, especially when they had McDade, Peter Cook, and then they just got Ian Burke back in as well. They looked really, really good going into the championship last year. And it has, been nowhere near the same level this year from them. And you look at the Sligo game and it did look like they fell over the line. They did fall over the line against Sligo. They clung on for dear life. That late goal by Rob Finnerty was as late and as dramatic as they'd ever want to do it. And they sure that they got out of there, take the win. But I doubt that Joyce was, popping open a bottle of champagne in the dressing room. I'd say he was, okay, lads, we got out of jail there. Let's get ready for a Connacht final. Because I think that would have been unbelievable if Sligo had beaten Galway. That would have been one of the shocks of the summer already. And I feel like Mayo, I feel like they're not going to be able to swing their performance around in time. I think Mayo are going to be ready for them. Really, really do. I think the Sligo game actually took more out of Galway than the Roscommon one took out of Mayo, which is something that would have surprised me on the way up.
And just one more question about both of our predictions. For Mayo in particular, you mentioned that they're going under the radar. Roscommon was a boring game, but at the end of the day, Mayo won pretty comfortably in Hyde Park, and they did pretty well at the league as well, without getting to a league final. And they beat New York with minimal fuss as well over the Bronx as well. Kevin McStay surely has to be happy with the year, the way it's going, and especially with Mayo performing well, with winning games and things like that. And the media not talking about them being all-Ireland contenders. They're talking about Donegal, they're talking about Derry, they're talking about Dublin, they're talking about Kerry to a lesser extent as well. No word about Mayo in any media circles whatsoever. And I think McStay will be quietly happy with that, look at the media attention.
He'd be absolutely delighted with that, because I think hype has been Mayo's biggest enemy over the last decade. They always have a big signal win and everybody loses their minds. Mayo are going to win the All-Ireland. It's Mayo's year. And then it just doesn't happen. And I just feel like in those key moments, you see players break in those key moments under the pressure of the moment that they are experiencing. Like Ryan O'Donoghue's penalty against Tyrone. I've never seen a player take longer to kick the ball after the whistle was blown for him to take the penalty. It was like, just kept going like this. And then eventually stepped up and blasted it. And it was just like, I feel like when you're in moments like that and you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, because the history of Mayo not winning since 1951 and the myth about the curse and everything like that. And then on top of that, like how many people have been convinced and been saying, this is Mayo's time. Mayo have to do it now. Like a perfect example is you look at Pat Gilroy with Dublin. Pat Gilroy in Dublin, when he came in, he took over from Pillar Caffrey. And Dublin throughout the 2000s under Tommy Lyons and under Pillar Caffrey were a hype machine. And it was a brilliant cash cow for the GAA, because Dublin were filling out Croke Park to play against Laois and to play against Offaly and teams that Dublin now absolutely slap around like in games that, 20,000 people go to watch because they know the end result. But back in the day, Dublin were a lot more beatable and they were a lot more gettable. And that's why 82,000 people were pouring into Croke Park to watch Dublin play against Laois, to watch Dublin play against Offaly, because a lot of people thought Offaly would win, thought Laois would win. Because not only were those sides better at that time, like Laois and Offaly had all-stars in their teams at the time, but Dublin were also way too hyped up. And they were way too much under pressure to perform, to deliver. And Dublin did make mistakes around that time and had performances like Tyrone in 2008 and like Kerry in 2009, where they fell flat on their face. And funnily enough, against Mayo in 2006, Dublin fell flat on their face for the first half, managed to pull it back in the second half, and then Mayo came back and won the game again. But point is that Mayo, the hype definitely ramps up the pressure on their players. And when Pat Gilroy came in after Pillar Caffrey, the first thing he did was to try and calm the hype down amongst the players first and then the fans. So just calm it down. And that's why it says it in Dublin's, the Road to the Sam Maguire, that book in 2011. It says that when Dublin played Donegal in the All-Ireland semi-final of 2011 and got through to the All-Ireland final, like the book was by Malachy Clark, and he said like one of the best things for Dublin was on the run-up to the All-Ireland final, nobody was talking about Dublin and nobody was talking about Kerry. Everyone was talking about Donegal, who weren't even in the All-Ireland final. So Gilroy was absolutely over the moon because there was no hype, there was no pressure, there was no Dublin have to do this, it's been 16 years. It was all talking about Jim McGuinness' style with Donegal and how this was a disgrace and yada yada. So Mayo going into this time last year, they just won the league and everybody was thinking Mayo have to win the All-Ireland. And then they lost to Roscommon, pulled themselves back a little bit, lost to Cork, pulled themselves back by beating Galway, and then got outclassed by Dublin. That's killed the hype dead. Are they a bad team? No, they're not. They're a very good team. Just as good as they were this time last year, as a matter of fact. So I think that they are in a better place now than they were last year. But knowing how this story goes, if they beat Galway on Sunday, here comes the hype.
We'll see after the final whistle, though, Seamus. Yeah, because I predict the Mayo win as well. I think they'll beat them by 2 or 3 points, but Galway really to put it up to them. But surely the hype won't go up.
It
Surely won't.
depends
But we'll
how
have
they
to
beat
see.
them. Depends how they beat them. If they
True.
absolutely win at a canter, if they outclass Galway, I think we'll hear a bit about can Mayo win the All-Ireland. If they scrape over the line against the Galway side who scraped over the line against Sligo, I don't think we'll hear about it too much. And funnily enough, I think that will probably be the best possible result because it will keep the hype to a lower level, which will take the pressure off the players. And they can go into a game, say a quarter-final against Dublin, should it come round again. They can go into a game like that without the weight of the world on their shoulders. They can go in as underdogs and give it a lash.
Whatever about scraping over the line in a provincial final, we won't see it in the next game for sure. Clare against Kerry in the Munster Senior Football Championship final on Sunday, 1:45 on RT2. Sorry, no, but like, to be honest, do you actually see? Honestly, no, Seamus, do you actually see Clare putting up to Kerry in this game?
No, if they lost by 15 points last year, and now Colin Collins isn't there anymore as their manager, and those 11 players aren't there. Owen Cleary's not there. Keelan Sexton's not there. Jamie Malone's not there. Keane O'Dee's not there. Cathal O'Connor's not there. Darren O'Neill's not there. It's Kieran Russell is another one, big player that's gone. Like, I don't know how you're going to turn around and tell me, oh, don't worry, we have them this time, with all those players missing. If you couldn't do it with all those players who made up the backbone of what was your team that consistently stayed in Division 2 year after year after year, you're going to lose all those players and beat Kerry the next year? That doesn't make sense. And I know that GAA math doesn't add up, and there have been shocks, but there's no shock coming in this game. Funnily enough, I actually don't think the Kerry will win by as much as they won last year. I think last year they won by like 15 points, 16 points. I think Clare might actually go very defensive. And I think if Mark Fitzgerald is being honest with himself, if you're going man to man with Kerry, you're asking to get hammered. I think they need to look at what Cork did well. I think they need to look at what teams like what Cork did well, not only this year, but last year as well. Because if Clare were going into this game against Cork, I think Clare wouldn't fear Cork at all. But Cork went into the game against Kerry and again showed them no respect, got stuck into them right from the start and actually put up a good display against Kerry. So I think Clare need to look at what Cork did and think, if we aren't scared of Cork and we think we can beat Cork and Cork can do that to Kerry, surely there's things we can take from their performance and try and replicate it in our one. Do I think Clare are going to win? No, but I think it will be less than 15 points this time. I've predicted Kerry by 10. I think I'll probably stick with that.
Do you think the game in Ennis is a factor in any way? Like, it probably should have been in Ennis last year to give Clare a bit of a chance, but it's in Ennis this year because of a coin toss. And Clare have got their first Munster final there since the 1919, I think it was. So like, would that be a factor in any way, or am I just clutchy at straws here?
I don't know how much of a factor it will be because, like, there has to be, again, this is what we're talking about with, with fans and everything like that. I think for the fans to turn out in droves, I think fans have to sniff an upset on the cards. I think they have to get a sense that there's something on here. Like, the day that will tell me that the Leinster Championship is slightly changing is if more than 20,000 show up to watch Dublin versus Meath, because they smell potential trouble for Dublin. We all knew the result of Dublin and Meath before it was over, before it even began. And that's why when you look at, like, for example, this Kerry-Clare game, a lot of Clare fans as well will be like, we're not beating Kerry. And I think if they were going to travel to Ennis from whatever part of Clare in which they are from and, take the time out of their day to watch the game, I think they don't want to go and watch their team get annihilated. And I think that they will, if they're honest, they will acknowledge that is a possibility in this game.
Just before we get on to Kerry, their prospects for this season, more or less, I'd say just a final question about Clare. Cork put it up to Kerry, and then Cork struggled against the likes of Tip, Clare, Waterford, Limerick at times. Like, they were losing to Limerick at half time. What do you think that is? Do you think it's a psychological thing? Is it just that Cork can put it up to Kerry, nobody else can? What do you think it is? Because honestly, Clare will put it up to Cork in 2 weeks' time. There's no doubt about it in the All-Ireland group stage when it does happen in Ennis in that time. So why can Clare put it up to Cork and then get hammered by Kerry? Like, what do you think that's down to?
Yeah, I think it's the thing that I said to you, man, like about how Cork set up. I think Cork actually relish a game in which they're the underdog under John Cleary. I feel like they relish a game in which they're the underdog. They set up with players like Sean Powter, like Rory Dean, like, you know, Colin O'Callaghan, Ian Maguire, that are big, strong lads around the middle, good at winning ball, you know, good at putting in tackles, hunting in packs around that, making the game difficult for the likes of Kerry, for the likes of Mayo, for the likes of Roscommon when they went in as underdogs, and they beat Mayo and beat Roscommon last year. But I think when a team is playing against Cork and sits back and is like, right, you come get us, I think Cork usually go with the same 15 against Limerick and against Clare in games where they are favourites. And then when the other team sits off them, as Limerick did, I think Cork are a little bit like they don't really know how to break them down. Because you look at players like a Blake Murphy, for example, who would be, you know, ideal for, you know, finding pockets and breaking down teams. There was no game time for him in the Cork team, hence why he left the panel. And you look at it and you're like, I think that's why Cork struggle against the Clare and actually relish a challenge against a team where they're underdogs, because I think they've gone with, this is our best 15, and they don't really change it depending on the team that they come up against.
Why do you think, just on Clare for a bit, moving away from Cork, why do you think Clare, just their confidence seems to go when they face the Kerry shirts, and their confidence seems to rise when they face the Cork shirts? Is it just strange? Yeah.
I don't know. I think like maybe it's a similar situation as Dublin and the hurling, that like we kind of can smell when we potentially have an upset on the cards. I think Cork are beatable for Clare, so I think Clare would get more up for that game. I don't know though. I think it's one of the things that, look, last year's game might have just been a once-off, that they just were way off the pace against Kerry, and maybe they'll be better this year. But like, I do think that they will put it up to Kerry. I'm predicting that Kerry will pull away coming towards the end, that Kerry will hit another goal in the last 15 minutes and kind of kick on from there and, you know, tap over a few more scores. And I think the game will look a lot better for Kerry than it actually was. I think like Clare will be like 4 points behind at halftime or something. And then in the second half, Clare will hold on for dear life until Kerry eventually kick them off and run away with it. I think that is how it's going to go. And I think Clare will leave with their head held high, even though the scoreboard won't be kind to them.
And just on Kerry for a bit, we talked about Mayo and hype and all that. And Kerry seems to be as low hype as I can remember from any season. And actually, I know they only beat Cork by 3 points, 18 points to 112. But at the same time, when you look at their stats here that I did in that game, 64% shot accuracy, 94% kick-out retention. David Clifford's still at 80% shooting accuracy himself, 4 shots taken out of 5, and went over the bar from him. So are Kerry as bad as people make out? Like, a lot of people are saying Dublin will win the All-Ireland, or Derry will push them close, or Donegal when they beat Derry, or serious All-Ireland contenders. Why do you think Kerry are kind of put in the back burner, do you think? Is it just because of that game in Croke Park against Dublin, do you think?
I think it's just the thing that I said to you earlier on. I think people live in the present too much. I think people, like, they flock to, they're either brilliant or they're terrible. Kerry are a great team. Like Sean O'Shea, David Clifford, they're once in a generation footballers, and Kerry are still winning games against everybody but Derry and Dublin that have beaten them this year. So like Kerry, I think the truth is that Kerry have done what they're expected to do. They've done what they're expected to do, and that's why people aren't giving them the props for doing what they've done. The games that people really wanted to see was the Derry game and the Dublin game, and they lost to Derry at home, and they got absolutely annihilated by Dublin and Croke Park, which is the one that is going to stick out to people. And against Cork, Cork did cause them problems and had a lot of goal chances in that game. And I think people watch that game through the lens of as well, that if Cork can get that many goal chances against you, well, then what happened against Dublin, where Con scored a hat-trick, could happen again with Shane McGuigan this time or someone like that. So I think people watch it through the lens of what's coming down the line. And the year that Kerry won the All-Ireland in 2022, up until the final, not a pip went past that defence. Cork were slicing that defence open time and time again. And Cork don't have as good a forward line as Dublin do, as Derry do.
Yeah, and we're both predicting, obviously, Kerry to win that Munster final. And before we wrap up the podcast, we'll look at the under-20 and we'll look at the game coming up this weekend. It is Roscommon against Galway in the Connacht under-20 football final on Saturday at 5:15 on TG Carr. This game is on at McHale Park in Castlebar. Just for a context for listeners and viewers and for anybody in interest of this final, like Roscommon have done well in the Connacht group. They finished top of the group with the under-20 championship. It's a 5-team group with Roscommon, Mayo, Galway, Sligo, and Leitrim. So Leitrim and Mayo finished at the bottom two. It was very close at the end. It went down all the way to the final day, with a third place actually going. Third and second, no particular order, went to Sligo and Galway. Roscommon finished top of the group, therefore progressing straight to the Connacht final when Mayo and Leitrim were knocked out. But Leitrim themselves got huge wins in this Connacht campaign, so they were very competitive with the likes of Paul Honeyman in this team. But for Roscommon in particular, first, Shane McGinley is their top scorer with 2 goals and 21 points. And recognisable name as second top scorer actually for you, Seamus, Bobby Nugent from St. Bridget's. He's second with 1-7, and he's a very good player, as we all know, for the club championship. Niall O'Donnell there with 1-2 as well. And Roscommon have scored a total of 4 goals and 44 points in 4 games. So that's an average of around 1 goal and 11 points per game, which is pretty good for under 20 level. And as for Galway, they've done pretty well in the Connacht Championship as well. Obviously, went through that group in second or third spot. Played against Sligo in that semi-final. That's a very good Sligo team. They won the minor championship at this grade in 2021 when it's the same group of players. And Galway hammered them really in the semi-final. So very good win for them. Colin Costello is their top scorer with 1 goal and 19 points. Matthew Thompson then with 1 goal and 13. Cian Murphy impresses as well with 8 points. They've scored a total of 6 goals and 67 points in this campaign, Galway. And as well as that, they were the All-Ireland minor champions in 2022. So they have 19-year-olds in this team as well. Some very good players in this team for Galway. So this is a close one to call. Look at the stats and everything like that, Seamus. Even look at 2 of us probably haven't watched them in enough detail to make an educated guess on the prediction. But this is a very close one to call. Look at stats and everything like that. I think the main players to watch up front in particular for Galway, probably Colin Costello and Matthew Thompson. For Roscommon, it's definitely probably Shane McGinley and Bobby Nugent from the St. Bridget's club.
Yeah, certainly. And like Bobby Nugent carries in the experience of being in that All-Ireland club final, of which I think he played very well against Glen. Like, it's 2 sides that are definitely, carrying the flag in terms of like the future generation of Roscommon footballers and Galway footballers. So there's always going to be interest and intrigue around these games. And if Roscommon are beating Galway at under 20 level or minor level, then it's a sign of things to come at senior level, and the same vice versa. So a lot of people will be paying attention to this game, especially Roscommon, given the fact that they are out of the Connacht Championship and they have a bit of time to watch this. You wonder, will Davy Burke be in attendance at this game, to take a look at Bobby Nugent and obviously
Shane McGinley,
McGinley. Like, they'd be paying attention to those lads to see, are they roadworthy for the seniors? And like looking at the scores and everything like that, Galway beating Sligo is a big result because obviously of the talent that Sligo are bringing through. It's a very hard to call because I haven't seen enough of the teams to actually say 100% I know who I'd back to win this game. Roscommon, I think, have a little bit more name power in the players like Bobby Nugent. I'll go with the Rossies.
I'm going to go for Roscommon as well, even though I did watch Galway and Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the practice game against Cork, and they look pretty good, but I'm going to go for Roscommon. Like, Bobby Nugent is a brilliant player for St. Bridget's. It will definitely be one to watch on Saturday. Kind of a shame that this is on the same time as Wexford and Galway in the hurling, but look, what can you do? Just scheduling and all that. And there were 3 other provincial finals this weekend. or this week rather, in the under-20 championship, and won last night, which was absolutely incredible. Tyrone 3-10, Derry 2-13 after extra time. Tyrone won this game 3-1 on penalties. Like, this was a brilliant game all throughout, and this was topsy-turvy going to extra time. Derry levelled it late on. Well, Tyrone got the last point, but Derry came back into the game more or less in that second half. And at the end of extra time, first half, Derry were 2-13 to 2-9 up, going to the final stages of extra time. But then a goal from Rory McHugh in the 73rd minute and Conor Owens in the 77th minute getting a point levelled this game for Tyrone, take it the penalties, and they won this game against Derry. And worth noting, this Tyrone group of players got to the All-Ireland minor final in 2021, which they lost to Meath. We'll go on to Meath in a sec. But like, this is a big win for Tyrone and really a tough match to overcome. And the Ulster Championship, it goes again, like, it's senior experience, and under 20 level, it's not much different either.
Certainly, and like for Tyrone as well, it's like massive. Like again, this is more talent coming through for Tyrone. Like, Brian Dooher is spoiled for choice when it comes to what young talent he wants to back in the Tyrone side. Like, you know, there's so many players as well that we saw absolutely smashing it for the Tyrone under 20s that we haven't even got to see yet, really, in the Tyrone team, like players like An Cluiche and McLean, and like to get a proper crack of the whip and everything like that in the Tyrone side. Obviously, he's currently stepped away, but I'm sure he'll return. Rory McHugh's next one up. Like, he looks absolutely outstanding for this under 20 crop. And to pull it back like that when you're in such a dire position with a few minutes to go speaks to the character of this team. And then to take it all the way to penalties and beat Derry, you know, obviously with the rivalry between the two counties now, especially with Mickey gone to Derry, like, that definitely does trickle down to the under 20 and the minor levels. There's no question about it. So it's a sweet, sweet victory for Tyrone, and one that they'll cherish.
Definitely so. Like, even Oma CBS won the last two Hogan Cups at schools level, so that's great to see as well. Like, that's a sign that Tyrone minors are rising through the ranks as well as under 20s as well. Owen McElholm's a really exciting player at the age as well, 20 years of age. He was 17 in 2021 for that minor campaign. He's been excellent. He had, I think, an 80% shot accuracy in the Hogan Cup final last season, which was absolutely incredible for Oma CBS. But Derry has a brilliant players. Oisin Doherty as well got on the score sheet regularly in this game, but both sides have some very good young players and they have a lot to offer, no doubt about it. Into the final two provincial finals, and one game I was at last night, Cork and Kerry. Unfortunately for the Rebels, it was a loss in Tralee. Kerry 115, Cork 12 points. It was 9 points to 5 at half time, but a Tomas Kennedy goal for Kerry straight away after half time. It kind of sealed this game for Kerry throughout. Cormac Dillon scored 6 points for the Kingdom. Daniel Kirby scored 2 points from wing forward as well. An excellent performance from Kerry overall, including from Luke Crowley, who's a son of a nephew, I think, a family member of a legend for Kerry football. And speaking of legends for Kerry football, Tomás O'Shea is their manager. Brian Sheehan is in the backroom team for that Kerry squad, so it's always good to have them. But just from a Cork point of view, Seamus, there was one guy in particular. He's 18 years of age, Dara Sheedy. He scored 2 points for Cork last night. He was only minor last season, and he was absolutely incredible for Cork. He was run off the par, more or less. He did a lot of work, trojan amount of work, and then he went off with pulled a hamstring, I think, late on in the game, and he was absolutely incredible running up and down the field. That shows that he has potential in this team. But Kerry march on into the All-Ireland semi-finals. They'll face Meath. We'll talk about Meath in a bit, but good win for Tomás O'Shea's side here.
Certainly, and like, as you said, Sheedy definitely announced himself at the same time as one to watch. And like, Kerry, like, the factory continues for Kerry. Like, it's no surprise that they keep springing players through the ranks when they're, you know, they keep winning Munster titles at under 20 level and at minor level, and then, you know, keep making a push for the All-Ireland every year. Like, this is where the magic is made. And to beat a Cork side who are definitely up for it, you know, the goal was obviously crucial. It's a good win, and Tomás O'Shea certainly would be delighted with how, you know, his spell with the under-20s is going. Like, that's, you know, silverware into the bank and into the semi-finals now with a hope for more. Yeah,
exactly. Like, Johnny Crowley is the guy related to Luke Crowley, and like, that's a brilliant family member to learn. Exactly, not bad at all. And Kerry have a very good crop of players coming through. Obviously, Bertie Mounthawk reached the Curly, they won the Curly Vree and reached the Hogan Cup final as well. So there's a lot of good players in Kerry. That's their third under 20 Munster in a row, and they'll face Meath in the semi-final. They comprehensively beat Louth 3-13 to 12 points. To be fair to Louth, Kieran McArdle had a brilliant campaign for them, top scorer so far in the under-20 championship, and they beat Dublin in the semi-final, so that was a shock result in Parnell Park for Louth, but ultimately it was too much for them. A brilliant Meath team got over the line this game. Jamie Murphy scored a total of 1-5, 1-3 from play. Eamon Armstrong, another excellent player, an Irish underage soccer player, from what I was reading as well, with 1-2 in this game. Ty Martin with the other goal for Meath. And this Meath team, this was the same Meath group that won the All-Ireland Minor Championship in 2021. It's the same manager from that season that is there for 2024 as well. And worth noting as well, it was Tyrone that they beat in the final. And Meath are playing Kerry. Tyrone will play the winners of Galway Roscommon on Saturday. So it's leading towards a Tyrone-Meath final. And Meath, at this grade, they look really, really good. And for Louth in particular, Seamus, to beat Dublin, is that a sign of things to come in Leinster? Well, hopefully, because the Leinster Championship needs new life more to it, and they need sides like Louth and Meath to step up. And Kildare, to be fair, won the under-20 All-Ireland last season too.
You would hope so. You would hope that it's a sign of things to come, that things are going to get more competitive in the Leinster Championship. But like, it's been this way for a few years now, that Meath and like Kildare have been winning stuff at under 20 level and minor level, and then we haven't seen it come to fruition yet. So I wouldn't hold your breath, but it still is a positive sign. It's always positive. And like, the more and more that it continues, the more unlikely it is that Dublin will continue to have the dominance at senior level that we've been having. But when you look at it this way, like, Louth to beat Dublin was a sensational achievement, and that gives a shot in the arm to the Louth seniors going in to play Dublin in the Leinster final. It gives them a little bit of belief that, like, look, the under-20s are out here showing us how it's done. And then before that as well, like, Meath, O'Rourke will definitely be keeping his eye on this. Like, he was saying comments after the Dublin game that, like, he has his eye on a certain group of players that they can run with now and try eventually beat Dublin in the Leinster game. Like, that's the plan. So you'd wonder what players out of this is he looking at as being the players that he wants from this squad to come in and help out the senior squad. Be interesting to watch.
Definitely so. Like, you have it likes of Eamon Armstrong and Jamie Murphy there, and Hughie Harcourt at the forwards is a very good, exciting player. So is Liam Kelly in the back line, and they were part of that minor team as well a few seasons ago. And worth noting as well about Dublin, as we're on the Leinster Championship here, they haven't won an under-20 Leinster title since 2020. Offaly won in 21, Kildare in 22, Kildare again in 23, and obviously Meath this year for the first time since 2001 for them. So that was a brilliant win at under-20 level for Meath. So again, like, is that a bit of hope for Leinster counties? The likes of Offaly, the likes of Louth who reached the final, the likes of Kildare who won 2 in a row, and the likes of Meath who themselves have very good success at underage. Is it a sign that Dublin underage success is drying up and then it'll translate to seniors, or is that just the way it is at underage and Dublin will go to seniors in a better light? Because Tommy Rooney was speaking off the budger after Meath win over Louth in the under-20 final, and he was saying it'll be the same in seniors. Dublin will still win in Leinster time and time again in senior because of the psychological damage it's done to Leinster counties. Would you agree with Tommy Rooney there, or would you be more positive given that the underage success at under-20 level in particular is there?
I think Rooney has a great point what he makes. Like, I think when you go to Croke Park as a young lad and you're put in corner forward, like, let's take Jack Bryan for example. Keith O'Neill is another one, a full forward for Offaly. Like, Keith O'Neill was fantastic against Dublin. He kicked like two genuinely incredible points in a row from more or less the same position outside of the right boot, and it was the type of kick that the whole crowd was like in awe of. Like, you could tell from the claps, like, that was like, wow, that was a lovely score. And he played with that youthful exuberance and energy, and he was daring. He went at Dublin a lot, but Dublin bet the living daylights out of Offaly, and he's taken off, and like Johnny Kelly, like Declan Kelly, sorry, shakes his hand, and it's just like you can tell he's sitting there like, oh, what more can I do? Like, literally did everything I could have possibly done. We still got annihilated, and it does affect your confidence then going into the next game, because you look at Jack Bryan for example, the ball never went into him and he missed 2 chances. He had Michael Fitzsimons marking him and then he's whipped off. And you just wonder, like, that's a footballer of the year in under 20 there, who does, like, it doesn't seem to me like he has like a ruthless finisher in him. Does that make sense? Like, he seems like he is a confidence player, and he seemed at the under-20s like his confidence was just absolutely through the roof. But I feel like Tommy Rooney has such a good point that like you come up to Croke Park and you get embarrassed like that. I feel like it does have a mental effect where you're just like, we can't beat these guys. Whereas when Dublin bring a player through to the senior team, it's like, you know, they've like, I'll put it this way. Galway beat Dublin in the 2020 under-20 All-Ireland final, and Tom O'Callaghan shot the lights out. Galway have got Tom O'Callaghan and Jack Glynn from that team. And Tom O'Callaghan. What?
And Matthew Tierney as well.
And Matthew Tierney, sorry. But like Culhane has been injured, hasn't really got into the team. Dublin, out of a losing final team, have got Lee Gannon and they've got Lorcan O'Dell. Like Dublin have got just as much from a final in which they lost, you could say. So like my point is that Dublin are very good at taking one player from each under-20 crop and just putting them in cornerback or wing back, and then just the cycle continues. Whereas I feel like when Louth or Meath or Offaly get a good under-20 side, because, you know, it is like it has been rare, it's put so much pressure on that crop because then they try build a senior team around that crop. Does that make sense? Whereas Meath and Kildare, what's so important is that they need to put all of these under-20 sides together as a cohesive unit.
Yeah, definitely. A prime example, Brian Fenton did do well at underage, and look at him now, one of the best players in the country. So Dublin know how to improve players more or less, and that's the big thing about it. So we'll have to see how it progresses in the next few years with Offaly, Meath, Louth and Kildare in general. But that's the wrap up for this week's games. Like the video, like the podcast, subscribe, give the podcast a rating on Spotify and YouTube in particular. Thanks to Seamus from Clare for joining this podcast. Thanks to Capture Athletics for sponsoring today's show. And until the next time, we'll see you then, and take care.